Hello and thank you for joining me. My name is Jane Kotzer and I explain to you in layman terms psychiatric injury awareness. My dedication is to psychiatry and not psychology. Psychologists help their patients through psychotherapy, which is talking. Psychiatrists medicate their patients and is my point of focus. All my videos and content that I share on the topic of psychiatry is based on my personal experience of 23 years of being polydrugged as well as my own research. I'm not a medical doctor and therefore my content is for information purposes only. Without further ado, let's get going on today's topic, which is why it is important to know your medication, both prescribed and OTC, over the counter. I'm definitely not implying that you need a degree to understand the ingredients of your medication, so don't worry, it's a lot less complicated than that. So what is it about your medication that you need to know? First off, and probably obvious, is the name of your medication. Many medications are hard to pronounce, let alone remember, especially if there's a whole list of them. It's a really good idea to have them jotted down somewhere in your phone, for instance on a memo pad or similar application, or just on a card and keep it in the pouch with your cell phone. It is very important that you have access to the complete list of medications that you're on, as well as the dosages at all times, especially if there's some kind of emergency, whether it's a medical emergency, a car accident, or you're hijacked and you need medical intervention. The doctors, the paramedics, can only work with the information that you give them. It is very important that you know exactly what medication you're on so that they're able to treat you accordingly. In a stressful situation, it is very difficult to recall the correct information. If you've ever been in a hijacking situation or a medical emergency and you've had to remember information at the drop of the hat, it is often very difficult to know exactly what medication you're on currently. Sometimes we remember or recall medication that we were on years ago, which is not going to be helpful to the situation. As a parent, it is very important that you know what medication your child is on, what they are currently taking, what they were taking, and the dosages, as well as what time of day. If you are caring for your loved one, whether it's a spouse, an aged parent, grandparent, whoever it may be, it's also very important that you know what medication they are on for the same reasons. The other important factor to remember is not only to know what class of medication you're on, but the actual name. There's no point in telling your doctor, I take some pain medicine for my headache. It could be that the side effects of that medication that is giving you some horrible adverse reaction that you're going to see the doctor about. It's no use in just knowing the category. You need to know the name of the medication. Even if you're not living with your parents or the person that you care for or your loved ones, it is a very good idea that you still have a list of their medications. For instance, I have a list of all the medication that my dad is taking. Perhaps my mom might not be home and I might be visiting and something happens. I can then take charge of the situation and be able to give the correct information to whoever needs it at the time. Here's another reason why you need to know all the medication you're on, including over-the-counter medication. For instance, I go to the optometrist because I need new glasses or an eye checkup or whatever the case may be, and my optometrist says to me, hey, your eyes are very, very dry. The optometrist is then going to ask me, what medication are you on? Because obviously each chemical that we put into our body, whether it's a supplement or an effervescent or whatever the case may be, has a side effect, hence the existence or the reason it exists. It's great if I can tell her, you know what, these are my list of psychotropic medications, the names, the dosages, but I forget to tell her, you know what, I've been taking antihistamines for the last week for some allergy or rash or whatever, and I forget to tell her about those antihistamines. One of the side effects of antihistamines is dry eyes. This is why it's very important that you make a note of, keep a list of whatever medication you take, whether it's prescribed and or over the counter. The second important factor is the dosages. It really doesn't help your doctor if you tell them, you know what, I take 2 of those a day, I take 2 benzos a day, or I take 2 antidepressants a day. That is as vague as can get. On the box of medication that you get from the chemist when your doctors prescribe medication for you, it will always give you the dosages on the top somewhere. It will tell you 25 milligrams, 30 milligrams, whatever the case may be, and how many times a day you take it. Please remember to have that information included in the list of medications that you keep. The other reason why it's so important to know what dosages you're on is, for instance, my wonderful grandfather. Bless his soul, he's passed on now, but at some stage years ago, he was given an enormous amount of medication that affected his blood pressure. He was therefore often passing out and feeling dizzy and not being able to drive, keeping his heavenly angels and us on our toes all the time, when in fact we realized down the line that, you know what, the specialist had increased his dosage that was enough to medicate a horse. And subsequently, when the GP took that medicine right down, he was feeling a lot better. So it's very important that at any given time, people know exactly what dosages of the medication you're on. And remember, dosages and medication affect everybody in a different, completely different way. There are so many factors, and it's subject to each individual person. What works for me, what might not work for you, and so on. The third important factor of what you need to know about your medication is the time of day that you are prescribed to take this medication. This is important because often doctors are not infallible and mistakes do happen. A friend of mine was prescribed quetiapine, or as we know it, Seroquel, and he was prescribed to take it in the morning, when in fact one of the well-known side effects of quetiapine or Seroquel, the generic is Topical, is sleep. So the fact that he was not able to function during the day was only later realized after we had a chat, and I say, you know what, I take Seroquel at night because the side effect is sleep. And he put two and two together and was able to approach his doctor and say, you know what, this is a situation. It's very important at all times that you know the name, the dosage, and when during the day you take that medication. This brings me to the fourth and final point of why you need to know your medication, which is why your doctor prescribed that medication for you. Please remember that a disease or a condition or an illness does not automatically equate itself to a specific group of medication or class of medication like benzos, SSRIs, which is antidepressants, that sort of thing. And here's why. In the last 20 years, there's been a growing popularity in using medications other than for what it was prescribed. No, other than for what it was created. For instance, your SSRIs, which is your selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which is falling into the antidepressant class of medication, has often been used in the recent years, in the last 20 years, to treat PMS. So just because you are taking what is classed as an antidepressant doesn't mean you are being treated for depression. Another example would be that you go and see a new GP or psychiatrist or specialist or what have you, and you give them the list of medications. Assumptions are very bad in life, and even worse when it comes to medicine. It's one thing to know the medication you're on. It's a completely different thing to know why you're on that medication. And it's very important for your next healthcare provider, your specialist, optometrist, doctor, GP, whatever it is. You need to be able to tell them what you're on and why you're on this medication. I really hope this information was helpful and that you will remember why it is very important to know your medication. Other than that, I hope you have a wonderful day further, and remember, if you've skipped a dose of medication, please do not double dose the next day. Stay safe, God bless, and see you next time.